Hello, Erin. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Trek on Tuesday. I feel like our audience is wise enough to know there's a certain hallmark at the beginning of these Trek on Tuesdays that indicates whether behind the scenes Brian is here or he's not.
Yeah, you can tell by the length of the delay at the beginning whether our expert is running behind the scenes or whether our second, still an expert, but maybe not quite as much of an expert, this person right here. Gina's pulling double duty today, everybody. So just thank you in advance for
it's not that I'm not an expert, it's just that I have double the work. No, not really. We are so glad.
While you're talking, it's very tricky.
No, I always point that out just to reiterate how important behind the scenes Brian is to the show. Just because he's behind the scenes doesn't mean he's not doing a whole lot that I know I can't do quite as well.
I tried to do it once when we were at the National Annual Meeting, Gina, and I think I pushed the wrong button or something like that. So yeah, it's not easy to do it and talk at the same time. Absolutely.
Right.
You're doing great.
Well, speaking of skills, today we are talking about Eagle Scouts, who are obviously already skilled, but these guys that we're talking about, both do happen to be men, are top level athletes. They are the best of the best, and we're going to talk about what they did. We were talking a little bit about sports mascots because I know that we have some good mascot content, and I realized, I'm not the sportiest person, but I was like, you know what? There have been a few stories about famous Eagle Scouts lately.
Yeah, and we're probably not that far away, Gina, from having stories about women Eagle Scouts who are in sports, right? It's only been, 3 or 4 years since women, the first class of Eagle Scouts, so hasn't quite been enough time yet, right?
Yeah.
But it's only a matter of time before there's a WNBA player or someone like that.
Soccer,
Scout, right?
tennis,
exactly.
Softball. I can't wait.
That's exactly right.
I bet there's some college level athletes who are female Eagle Scouts.
Yeah.
And if you know any, definitely let us
know.
Up.
Absolutely, because one of the athletes we're going to talk about today is a college level athlete, a young man who is an Eagle Scout in the middle of his second year in college. But it being September, Gina, this is obviously one of the greatest sports times of the year. When fall hits, the sport you think of is, of course, basketball. I tricked you there.
You sports people do seem rather revved up. I know football just started, and
yes. Football just started, but what actually just finished was an event called the Basketball World Cup. It's an international basketball competition. Maybe not quite as glamorous as like the Olympics. Everybody remembers the Dream Team from many, many years ago in the Olympics, and the United States, both men's and women's basketball team have a very strong history of success in the Olympics. The FIBA World Basketball Cup is
not
kind
FIFA.
of not FIFA. FIBA, the B stands for basketball. Yes, and the United States team, they did not win the gold medal this year, but they did get a really good performance from a young man, still relatively young compared to me, an Eagle Scout named Josh Hart. And Josh is a guy that we've covered on the On Scouting blog many times. We wrote a story about Josh when he was in college. He went to college at Villanova, won a national championship, and played many years in the NBA. He currently plays for the New York Knicks. And just this last month, he represented the United States of America. What a cool photo that is right there of the young man in his USA uniform. And what was kind of cool is there was, the roster, the United States roster, Gina, was not, shall we say, complete. The biggest superstars in the sport, names that even you would recognize, LeBron James, people like that, Gina, did not play in this event. And so they relied on guys like Josh. Josh is obviously a good player, right? He's better at basketball than you and I are, but he's not LeBron James. But
I've never played him, but I guess we could assume.
Josh is a guy, one of those guys who kind of does all the little things right. And he really got, if you do a search for his name, after every game the United States played, there was a story about this Josh Hart guy. And oh man, he does all these things. He's only 6'4", but he plays like he's more like 6'8" or 6 foot. Only 6'4" in basketball world, Gina. That's kind of short.
I did not know that.
Exactly, but he plays much taller than his height. So the Team USA coach, Gina, is also an NBA coach. His name is Steve Kerr. He has won an NBA title as an NBA coach. He volunteered to coach Team USA at this event. And he had this to say about Josh Hart, who is a player that he had never coached before, a player he had coached against, but never coached on the same team before. Josh is just a winner, Steve Kerr said. People ask what position he plays. He plays the position of winner. I don't know what position he plays, but he gets loose balls and guards anybody. At one point, one of my assistant coaches turned to me and said, some people get 50-50 balls, right? Like balls where there's a 50-50 chance he's going to get it. Josh gets the 30-70 balls. Josh Hart gets balls that only 30% of the other players would get. One of Josh's biggest fans is his teammate for the New York Knicks, a guy named Jalen Brunson. Jalen used to play for the Mavericks here, June. You might remember just a few years ago. He now plays, sadly, for the New York Knicks because he's really good. And Jalen says about his friend Josh Hart, he's a hardworking guy that has the ability to do things on the court that every other NBA player does, but he takes pride in the little things on a nightly basis. He's an Eagle Scout. Not that surprising, right? He brings that toughness.
Right. He's prepared.
And he's just a different man. He goes out there and is relentless. He's been doing that since the day I met him. Jalen and Josh Hart go way back. They have been friends for many, many years. They played together in college, Gina. So they go back 6 or 7 years. They know each other.
So a couple comments just before you, I know there's a little more to the story, but first thought, the comment that coach said, like, at what position does he play? I don't know, winner. I think that's very funny. And
what a great quote, right?
Yes, right. And also kind of a cool attitude from a coach who maybe you typically would think, oh, he wants them to kind of fit in the lines. It does remind me of when I asked my 4-year-old nephew what position he played in baseball. And he said hitter.
Yes.
I said, no, but what position? And he said, I'm the hitter.
Accurate. That's
and
what
he's
he
a good
does.
hitter, but
Yeah, right.
Probably a little different. But maybe one day he'll be an Eagle Scout. Maybe one day he'll be playing for the majors. Well, who knows?
He'll be known as a hitter. Exactly.
He might be. And his coach will say, what position do you play? I don't know. He's a hitter. Maybe he's the designated hitter, Aaron.
Right. Exactly.
I don't know if they do that, though, when you're 4.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, actually. Yeah, but
I don't know. Another thought was, I kind of forgot it because of my first thought. Oh, no, it's a comment. It's a comment from Omid, and I wanted to read it. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, tall guy. He's a famous American basketball player with a height of 2 meters and 20.
Mm-hmm.
So Aaron put that into
what is
feet
that?
for us.
How do you convert that? Yes.
It's funny, Omid, because we are
Americans.
so much
we don't
metric.
even know what that means. Yes.
Yeah, we don't even.
Exactly.
Right.
We don't know. You're going to have to put that into a little calculator for us.
Right.
UK to American calculator or whatever it is.
Yeah, metric to. I mean, it's really the rest of the world.
It's pretty much everybody. Exactly.
Not, yeah.
Yes. Right.
Anyway.
Right.
Okay.
And I wanted to point out, we've actually covered Josh Hart on the blog a handful of times. And back in 2016, we got some good quotes from Josh about his time in scouting. It's really cool to think about that. This is an NBA player, a millionaire, plays in New York City, one of the most, glamorous places in the world to play. And he talks about his time in scouting. And what he says is, on Monday night after basketball practice, I took the bus, got home around 6:45, totally exhausted. I had stopped thinking as much about scouting because I was so focused on basketball. But his dad said, let's get in the car and go somewhere. And his dad got him in the car. He just pulled right up to the troop meeting and said, you're going to finish what you started. I promised him I was going to finish, and I kept thinking that I made that promise. He finished his Eagle Scout project, his Eagle Scout requirements a week before his 18th birthday. That's pretty common. Sometimes you cut it really close. You have to earn the rank of Eagle before you turn 18. I really had to make those strict deadlines to keep my promise, but it's a big part of the reason I am the man I am today. Those situations and what I learned translated into basketball.
That's the back of him there. Don't get who he is confused. You can't mistake him because it says Hart. We're talking about Josh Hart.
Exactly.
Greg is right on track with what we want to ask the audience today. Drop the name of a famous Eagle Scout, particularly. I guess we'll accept famous scouts of all kinds, but especially famous Eagle Scouts who are athletes. And Greg came in with a great one. Another person that we have done some stories on and has been in Scout life, William Byron. Yes, that's excellent. William Byron, the NASCAR driver and a good NASCAR driver as well, an Eagle Scout, and has at times driven a BSA car, I believe, really represented the BSA very well. I'm thinking we've been so lucky that we've gotten to talk with a couple NASCAR drivers live. I believe William Byron was a pretty essential part of our National Pinewood Derby race from a few years ago. So that was cool.
Yeah, he was. And if I remember correctly, wasn't William in Scout Life magazine as a young man,
Yes.
just rising up the ranks? And look at him now. He's
Yeah,
big
I know.
time,
He was
Gina.
young.
Yeah.
And he's still young, but it's just like he was like, scout age.
He
And
was a teenager, I believe.
Right.
Yes, right.
That's exactly right.
Yep. There's another story that I came across, Gina, of an athlete, and this is a name that a lot of folks haven't heard of yet. He plays college football at the University of Tennessee. His name is Addison Nichols. He's from Atlanta, but he went to college at the University of Tennessee. There's a young Addison right now. He's an offensive lineman. Addison, so he's only 1 inch taller than Josh Hart, 6'5", but he
That
weighs
is so tall. I always thought, I've heard people say 6 foot's not the tallest in basketball, but I didn't know
6 foot's kind of short in
wasn't.
basketball these days. 6'4" is fine. Football, they're not quite as tall in football, but Addison is 6'5", 327 pounds though. So he's a big fella. He's an offensive lineman, and that's good size for an offensive lineman.
He's definitely a big guy.
Yes, definitely a big guy. Offensive line, Gina, is probably the position in football for college football players. It takes them the longest. Very, very rarely will a freshman just walk into a college campus and start at the offensive line. Addison's not starting at Tennessee, which is a really good team, by the way, but he is playing a lot of snaps. He's playing as a backup, quite a few snaps. They've played 2 games so far. There's an interesting story about Addison, though. Being a college athlete, it's kind of a year-round job. They work out. It's not just during the fall season they work out. They have spring practice. They have summer workouts. Addison missed one of his summer workouts. You have to really, if you're going to miss a summer workout in college football, especially at a program like Tennessee,
you better have a good excuse.
Better have a good excuse. You can't just skip workouts just because you feel like it. You don't worry about that right there. Addison had an excuse. He was invited to attend a fundraising event in Tennessee, and for a scout council out there. So he asked his head coach, a guy named Josh Heupel, "Is it okay if I miss this workout to go attend this event?" His coach gave him permission to, and he went and spoke in a room full of scouts and adults and supporters of scouting. He actually, even though so he plays football in Tennessee. The event was over in the western part of the state. In order to get back in time for his next workout, he flew with his dad. He and his dad flew over because it was a 45-minute flight as opposed to a 3 or 4 hour drive. Flew back and forth so he would miss as little bit of practice time as possible.
Wow.
What's all kind of funny or interesting about that, Gina, is that Addison earned the rank of Eagle in high school in Atlanta, but it was right during COVID, so he never got to have a proper court of honor. Basically, his community was shut down at that point. So at this event, they kind of did a surprise court of honor for him. His dad was already there, and he didn't know it was going to happen.
He thought he was just going to speak.
He thought he was just going to speak. And then at the end, they said, "Okay, we've got one more thing, Addison." So they did a surprise court of honor. They gave him a pen to give to his father and gave him one to take home to his mother. And he told me when we spoke on the phone a few weeks ago, he told me how moved he was that they did that. So that's definitely a name to remember. Addison Nichols,
is, right?
Yeah, there he is right there. Yeah, that's him and his dad right there. That's exactly right. And I think that's right during the court of honor, right when he's finding out that we're going to do a court of honor for him right there on the spot at that fundraising event. Very, very cool. When Addison was in high school at Atlanta, his parents, like a lot of parents, they wanted to keep him busy with things that would, develop him as a human being. And so scouting was one of the things they chose, and he stuck with it. And to this day, he's still a big volunteer. He volunteers at an animal shelter right there in Knoxville, where the University of Tennessee is. Spends a lot of time there taking care of animals at the shelter and things like that. Good all-around guy, and probably a bright future as well. He's only a redshirt freshman, but definitely an NFL prospect. He told me that, that's his goal down the line. He wants to play in the NFL, a
red shirt freshman. It looks like their team is orange.
Yes, Tennessee. Okay.
I'm just kidding.
I was wondering about that, but good. That's their colors. Yes, the University of Tennessee wears orange, but he is a red shirt, which means he was with the team last year, but didn't play.
A British Army.
Okay, yes.
Just
I can tell
kidding
that
again.
you know a lot about football.
No, yeah, it's very cool. What I like is I just think he seems like kind of like a warm, jolly guy. And it comes through in the photos, and I really like just like how genuinely happy he looks in what I think maybe is the Court of Honor photo, at least some of it. And I gotta give credit to Tennessee for letting him go do the Court of Honor. They, of course, like they should, just because hopefully they had some insight into it that he was going to be honored. But him speaking that night probably really inspired a lot of scouts and did a lot of good, and probably a mutually beneficial situation.
Yeah, exactly. I think his message, by the way, that speech that night, when he was speaking to a room full, like I said, a lot of younger people in that room. And his message was, this is a guy, playing football. If you're a high school football player, that takes a lot of time, obviously. And he was able to do that and remain active in scouting. And so that was sort of the point of his speech was that, hey, you can do both. You can be an athlete and you can participate in scouting. Scouting is something that complements extracurricular activities like that. You don't have to choose one or the other. Scouting is what makes you better at all that other stuff.
Yeah, I love that. Well, it's no surprise that there are some pretty accomplished Eagle Scout athletes out there. If you're watching this, please keep dropping the names of different Eagle Scouts you can think of who are either professional, maybe student athletes, but I'm just calling it like top level athletes. I think it's fair to say college athletes are some of the best in the country world.
Absolutely, and especially at a school like Tennessee, that's a top 10 ranked program. So yeah, absolutely.
Aaron, I'm going to ask you how tall certain people are. Is like Steve Nash, is he over 6 foot?
Yeah, Steve Nash. I'm going to say Steve still is probably 6'1" or 6'2", maybe. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I thought he was supposed to be short, and I guess maybe
relatively
that was
speaking, yeah.
Okay. What about? I thought like, is it true that like there was a man named man named JJ Barea? I thought he was supposed to be very short.
Yeah,
is he short?
JJ. That's a great question. I bet he was right around 6 feet tall. Maybe 5'11" at the shortest.
Okay, one more question. How tall is 2 meters and 20?
I don't know. I have no idea.
The great mystery.
We're waiting on Omen.
I just wish we had some tool out there that could give us this.
We had a viewer who could look that up for us.
I just Google it ourselves. I definitely am going to be Googling the height of different athletes because my mind is blown. It's a whole nother scale than I was aware. Again, I knew that like 6 foot was kind of short for a basketball player, which is funny. Right. But I did not think it blows my mind that 6'4" could be considered such.
So 2 meters is about 6.5 feet tall. And Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was about 7 foot, maybe 7'1" or 2" or something like that.
What?
So, so I bet, 2 meters and 20, it's probably about 7 feet, 7'2", something like that.
Wow. He is a tall guy.
When I was looking at Addison Nichols and when he said to me that he would like to play in the NFL, that got me thinking, I wonder how many current Eagle Scouts there are in the NFL. And I wish that there was an easy way to look this up. Unfortunately, we don't have any sort of list of like a master database.
They just live among us.
Right. Yeah. Where we can just cross-check. There could be some Eagle Scouts in the NFL. And if they don't necessarily talk about it all the time, we might not necessarily know, but I did find 4 that are verified, confirmed Eagle Scouts. Gina, would you like me to go over those 4 guys?
Yes. Is one of them still in the Eagles?
2 of them are still with the Eagles. Both of them played in the Super Bowl last year. A young man. He is young. He's 26 years old. Britton Covey. Britton is 5'8". He's like a normal sized person.
Sounds average.
He's a shorty. Britton is a wide receiver for the Philadelphia Eagles. He's an Eagle Scout. And Landon Dickerson. Now, Landon is 6'6", 332 pounds, as you can guess. He's an offensive lineman, also an Eagle Scout. Very appropriate that the Eagles have 2 Eagle Scouts.
I love that.
Yep.
I wonder if they feel a level of like, we better not get traded.
Yeah, exactly. They better not go to another team. That's exactly right. They're the only team that I know of that has multiple Eagle Scouts. Again, it is possible that there could be some out there that we just haven't heard about. Unfortunately, it's not that simple to just go check that real quick. But there are a couple of other players. Probably the most notable one is a guy named David Montgomery. Now, speaking of traded, David played for the Chicago Bears for most of his career. He now plays for the Detroit Lions. I'm sure you're aware, Gina. The Detroit Lions had a big win opening game. They beat the defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. David Montgomery is a running back. He's one of their leading rushers. He ran for 74 yards in their first game. He's a very, very productive player, and he is, ladies and gentlemen, an Eagle Scout.
No way.
Yeah, very, very cool.
Are there any Eagle Scouts who are like strength and conditioning coaches for the NFL?
You know what? I was going to get to that, Gina. There is an Eagle Scout who is a strength and conditioning coach. You and I met him at the national annual meeting a few months ago in Atlanta. His name is Monty Gibson. I almost forgot for a second. Monty Gibson, our old friend. Yes. Monty is a great guy. He has a great story to tell because there is a charity in the NFL called Cleats for a Cause, where you can have shoes, custom shoes made for yourself. You wear the shoes during a game, and it goes, and you can choose a charity of your choice to both raise awareness and actual funds for. He chose his home council, the Southwest Council of the Boy Scouts of America, because that's where he grew up, and he has wonderful memories of going to Philmont Scout Ranch with his father. So he had a trail map printed on his cleats, and that was the cleats that he wore during game that were eventually auctioned off. Very, very cool, inspirational guy. We saw him speak at the national meeting. We were both, you and I think, were ready to suit up and go play for a team after that. You can see why he would be a good strength and conditioning coach, because he had us all fired. I was ready to go lift some weights, Gina.
Oh, yeah. I have really body built since then.
Monty told us that he was very inspired by his father, who died just recently. And they used this as a way to memorialize his father's life. His father was his scout leader and took him and his brothers to Philmont, even took his mom, I believe, one time. So
he has a great family story, even extending from his childhood into, meeting his wife and all that as well.
Yep. And his dad, Philmont Scout Ranch, meant so much to his dad that even after all of his kids left and went off to college, his dad continued to lead troops to Philmont with a special emphasis on taking scouts there who wouldn't normally necessarily have the financial resources to get there, making sure that they could get there, helping them fundraise and do things to get to Philmont. Basically a scholarship to Philmont, if you will. Very, very cool.
One thing too, I'll say, I know we're probably going to wrap up here quickly, but Eagle Scouts are humble, and there's probably a lot of them out there that they're not on our radar as Eagle Scouts, and they all have stories like this. A lot of them have stories like this.
Yep.
If you volunteer locally and an Eagle Scout, it's probably a great chance to connect them with the council, get their story, tell us if nothing else. We'd love to know about all the Eagle Scouts out there, but sometimes they don't sing their own praises because they are humble people, but we would love to help sing those praises. So
Yep. There's a football player for the New York Giants. His name is Bobby Okereke. He's an Eagle Scout, and there's a lot of stories. Now, Bobby's only 6'1", Gina.
Oh, only.
Yep. He plays for the New York Giants. He's a linebacker, so he's a big, strong defensive player. He is also an Eagle Scout. He's got a pretty inspiring story as well. Encourage folks to I may have to see if I can interview him for the blog, Gina, because he seems like he'd be a good, a good spokesman for the BSA.
Yeah, they probably all would. They made it all the way to Eagle Scout, but I love that idea.
That's exactly right. Yes.
Well, Aaron, any closing thoughts? This was a fun episode.
What I always like to take away from stories like this is that, scouts or sports take up a lot of time these days. My daughter was an athlete. She spent a lot of time doing sports. Scouting is a great way to supplement that, right? It's a great way to every time I ever talk to an athlete who was a scout, or even if they didn't make it to Eagle Scout, they always talk about how scouting helped them become better at sports. It helps you with time management, helps you with focus, helps you with discipline, it helps you in setting goals, being a leader, one of the things that Addison Nichols had to do at the University of Tennessee was take this leadership course as a freshman. And he was like, he basically learned all that stuff in Scouts. He already knew how to be a leader and all that things like that. Not that the course wasn't helpful and great, but he basically, all that stuff was kind of second nature to him. So that's always kind of cool to hear that from people.
Yeah, it's very much compatible with what else you're doing. I hate to hear stories of scouts who just thought they didn't have the time because they got really invested in a sport or something that was going to be their professional calling, perhaps. And I do think, using stories like this to share with your scouts, if they're starting to feel like, oh, I got a lot on my plate, just remind them others have done this. This path has been carved for them. It's possible. Scouting should be there to support what they're doing, not hinder from it in any way.
That's exactly right. And almost every Scoutmaster is willing to work with you. Like if you're busy during football season, that's okay. You're gonna miss some meetings. You're gonna miss some campouts. That's okay. You'll have plenty of time in the spring and the summer to make up for that.
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake is not talking to the leaders of your troop, your unit, and giving them a chance because they're probably likely to work with you. But if for some reason it's really strict, we don't say this often, but if they're really strict or it's just not a good fit, there probably is a troop where it can be a fit. They might have some other youth who are in the same situation, whether it's marching band or football or whatever, and they can make it work for you.
And the first step, as you make a great point, Gina, the first step is to go to your Scoutmaster or whatever, a trusted leader. You just say, hey, I'm really busy in the fall. I want to stay active in scouting. What can I do? And they'll work with you.
Yeah, it would be hard not to. Kids are involved in all kinds of things. Yeah,
absolutely.
Great message. Good point to end on, Aaron.
Yes. Happy sports, Gina.
Happy sports to everyone. I hope your respective teams win if they're playing or resting, if they're supposed to be resting, or cross-training, if they're supposed to be cross-training. Good luck to you out there.
This is a great time for sports because the baseball season, I'm sure I don't have to tell you this, it's pennant race time. Baseball season's we're about a month from the World Series, if you can believe that.
Yes.
And football season is just getting started. This is the best time for sports of the year, I think.
It is good.
And let's give a round of applause for Gina for doing behind the scenes today. She did great. Thank you all for watching. We appreciate it. We will see you next time.
Tune in tomorrow for Troop Talk Live.
Thank you for getting that in there. Yes, we have a special guest tomorrow for Troop Talk Live. The same time. It's easy to remember now. It's all at 2 p.m. Central.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
See you guys later. Bye, everybody.